Well, it really doesn't feel like more than 5 minutes ago that I did my last drum machine video, which was about the Acetone Rhythm Ace. Now, this is a Roland TR-77, but this is a direct descendant of the Acetone. Now, what happened? Acetone made drum machines in Japan, and in 1972, Roland bought the company. At the time, the current production model was called the Acetone 8F, but it was also branded as the Bentley drum machine and the Bentley Rhythm Ace. And when Roland took over the company, they rebranded that machine and called it the Roland TR-77, and this became the first Roland product. And this drum machine is electrically pretty much identical to the Bentley. And this is a drum machine I've been looking for a very long time, because it's the same drum machine that Arthur Brown used on the Kingdom Come Journey album, which anybody that knows me knows I have a great affection for that record, as well as spending the last 20 plus years of my life working with Arthur Brown on various different things over the years. Anyhow, this is the TR-77. I'm going to show it to you when I first got it and some of the repair work I did to it, and then I'm going to let you hear it at the end. I purchased this drum machine locally along with an electronic organ from the same person. Now, I'm going to do a video about that organ later on. However, if we take a look at this drum machine, you can see it's in a little bit of a state. It was left in a room for a long time unused. Fortunately though, it did appear to work when I bought it, and I'm going to now take it apart and have a look inside and see what needs to be done. The first thing to spot is on the mains input, which you can see here. Now, it doesn't take Einstein to work out that this is not at all safe, so this is going to be replaced ideally with an IEC mains input connector. Right, well, I've removed the top off the drum machine. I've pulled off all the knobs and I've given them a clean in the sink, some soapy water. And inside the drum machine it actually looks pretty clean. I'm just going to show you some of the circuit boards inside. We start here with the power supply. The power supply actually looks in reasonably good condition, and I think the oscillator might be on here as well. I think the sort of triggering circuitry is here, but this is our power supply. There's two bridge rectifiers there. These capacitors, they don't seem too bad. I will look at them closer up just to make sure they're okay. But all the other parts on here look alright. It looks like that diode there may have been replaced in the past. But other than that, that looks pretty good. This is effectively our sequencer. It's basically a network of capacitors, resistors and diodes, and between it all that makes the different patterns that the drum machine uses. Again, it looks in very, very good condition actually. It doesn't look untidy at all. As we look at the mains coming in, there's this terminal block here that's been added with a bit of mains wire coming in. That is really not very good at all. This board here is basically the sound module. That's where all the sounds come in, and all the inputs are actually all along here, and they're all actually numbered for each of the drum machine's sounds. And this is why this particular machine is very popular amongst music enthusiasts and circuit benders, because you need I think it's a negative trigger, and I think it goes from something like about 18 volts, I think, to 0 to pulse the drum machine. And people have used MIDI to trigger modules, and they've basically, you can take one of these panels and you can turn it into a sound module triggered by MIDI, or you can actually, there's enough room in here that you could fit a MIDI trigger board and then hardwire it to the various inputs, and then this is a completely MIDI controllable device. I'm not going to do that because I like to keep things as they are, but it's really cool that something like this that was made the year I was born, 1972, can still be adapted for modern use if you so wish. I've just turned the drum machine around just so you can see the rest of it. In here is all a bit mucky. These are the switching matrices, and all the sliders and controls are underneath, all mounted to the front panel. But yeah, I don't think there's too much work that's going to be involved in this. I think it's basically a case of giving it a good clean, a close inspection of the power supply. But if it's anything like the power supply for the Acetone, then it should be fine. I might possibly change the capacitors, but we'll see. But otherwise, no, it's a pretty tidy looking device. So I'm looking forward to fixing this up and making a little bit of music with it. Well, this mains terminal block was fitted in here with this bolt, which was going through the back of the case, which was using one of the holes that held the name badge on, or the badge with the serial number. So I've replaced the screw here that holds the badge on with a short screw, crosshead to match the other one. I've taken this horrible bolt out. Anyway, I'm going to replace all this and I will heat shrink it and do it all properly. And I believe, even though this is class 2 wiring, I think because there is so much metal, I will take an earthing tab, which I may actually put here, and I will have it properly earthed. In the end, I opted for fitting in a nice little IEC main socket, which is much neater and tidier than any kind of cable. I also made use of the nut that was holding on the plate there to install a earth bonding strip there, which goes to the earth pin of the IEC mains connector, and I've done continuity tests all around the drum machine and it's getting a good earth all the way around. After sorting out the mains input, I then gave it a good clean. I cleaned all the pots, all the sliders, all the switches, and scrubbed the case. I actually took the wooden case apart and cleaned it with soap and water because it was that filthy. And once everything was clean, I put it all back together, and now I think it looks in pretty reasonable condition, especially for something that's as old as I am. Right, we'll look at this drum machine in a bit more detail now. To start with, you've got your on-off power button here. You've got this button called up tempo, which I'll come to in a minute. It's got a metronome and it's got a fade out button. Now the fade out button does exactly as it says. It will gradually fade in or out your drums to whichever length that you want. And the fade out is actually controlled by this slider here. So you can set it to a long fade or a short fade depending on the song that you wish to do. The other thing it has is this rather nice chrome soft touch start stop button. So I'm just going to tap it now. And it started playing. Now, tempo is controlled by this slider here. So the more we move it along, the faster it goes. And then we get it to a really slow tempo. Now this switch here, this up tempo, effectively speeds everything up. So you can go to an absolutely ridiculous speed if you want to. I'm just going to leave it back on the standard. The fade button here, if we stick it onto a fairly short fade, then I hit the fade out button. And as if by magic, it just fades out. We've got a few mixers here, so I'm going to start the drums again. And I'll bring everything down to start with. This is our master volume control. So we'll leave that up. Here's our kick drum. And there's some snare. On the far end, we've got the maracas cymbals and hi-hats. And when it's in use, there's the guru sound on there as well. You can change many of the sort of drum beats and adding more by using these switches here. So that's adding 2 beat or 4 beat. And then you've got variations on how they do it, turning this switch here. So yeah. So yeah, it can go. You've got quite a scope for variation on that. I'm just going to stick that back to normal. And let's look at some of the presets. So if we start on rock and roll 1, that's almost sort of classic sort of Bentley drum machine type fare. Rock and roll 2. Slow rock. Now I think this was one of the patterns that was used on the Kingdom Come album, because the original title of one of the tracks was indeed called Slow Rock. We've got ballad, western. Might speed that up a bit. And this is where the up tempo button would come in useful, because if you speed it up, that almost sounds like a late 80s dance track. And let's go to the march, jazz waltz, and the traditional waltz. And of course, like the other 8 Bentley rhythm machines, you can sort of put 2 together. So we could say that slow rock and ballad mixed together, ballad and western mixed together. That's quite a good sound, actually. We'll move on to the Latin sounds now. So you press this button here to select Latin, and on this bank you've got some different sounds that you don't have on the conventionals. So yeah, that's almost like sort of an OMD type intro. Cha-cha. And now this has got the guru sound that I mentioned earlier. So I'll fade it down. I'll bring it back in. Mambo. Again, that's got the guru on it. Samba. I wonder what samba and mambo sound like together. Yeah, not bad. That's samba, bossa nova. That's got some of the lettering rubbed off. I think it says baton, balton, I don't know. And you got bolero. And then tango at the end. Well, that's the basic overview of the TR-77. I think it's a great drum machine. I'm particularly pleased that this one didn't really have any faults. And as I mentioned earlier, you can get a MIDI upgrade kit for it. And much as I'd like to do that, I'm not sure it's worth doing it for all the sounds, but possibly some of the sort of more Latin sounds, I could get the 5-volt trigger module and put that in, and then run it off one of the MIDI trigger modules that I had in my earlier video, and you'd have a nice little set of sounds there. But to have all the sounds, you'd need something like a 15-way MIDI to trigger module, and they're not so easy to come by unless somebody decides to make one. If they did, then you could do a full MIDI upgrade. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video about this great iconic drum machine. This is definitely a keeper for me, and I fully intend to record music with this. I know I said that about the Rhythm Ace, but Rhythm Ace has had an upgrade now. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please like, share and subscribe. My subscriptions are going up all the time, which I'm really pleased about, and it's great to hear various comments from you on my other videos. So please keep checking back on this page, and hopefully see you in the next video.